When you go through dark times in your life, usually it's your fault. But in the cases where it's just fate, where the loss of a loved one, the loss of a friend, the loss of a business, the loss of, you are putting so much effort, how do you navigate such situations? One of the survivors of the Holocaust, and he said, he who has a why can live with any how. Before you suffer or before bad things hit you, have the reason why you live and arm yourself with such reasons. Sometimes you don't need to understand what you're going through. Sometimes the healing is in the presence. Sometimes the healing is in being heard. Sometimes you don't need someone to tell you what you need to do, especially when you're going through hard time. You actually sometimes know what you want to do. You just want someone to hear you. And I found it very interesting that when you start to speak to people about your problem, while you're speaking to them, you begin to speak about the solution. It's very interesting when it's pain and suffering, especially when it's internalized. The healing is in the speaking, or rather, it's in the hearing. So welcome back to the Nebula Academy. Last week, the last modules, we spoke about pain as an awakener, how you react, the two parts to it, meaning and nihilism. We also spoke about how we should react specifically in order to make good out of bad situations and the consequences of contending with evil. And he who fights the monster becomes the monster if you stay long enough into the abyss. He who fights the monster should see to it that he doesn't become a monster. If you stay long enough into the abyss stares back at you. That's like a summary of that particular section of the module. And the Nebula Academy is not to, again, is to teach critical thinking. It's to present a worldview, criticize it, tear it apart, extrapolate it, make meaning out of your extrapolations, and in it you're able to find meaningful code to live by. This particular module, we're talking about meaning in darkness. And like I had explained earlier, the firefly effect. And one of the things that I highlighted is when you walk into a room, a dark room, which is metaphorical to your life, and you do not see, you can't see anything, which is you don't know what the next step to take, and you don't know if the next step is going to be a dangerous one or not. How can you look out for the firefly? And that's the firefly effect, where you're able to be in a dark place in your life and still look for those glimmer of light that give you some kind of hope, right? There are better things to come. And this is not there's light at the end of the tunnel, because that particular concept, I struggle with it. And the reason I struggle with it is when you say there's light at the end of the tunnel, the next question is, what is the end of the tunnel? How do you know the end of the tunnel? Is there an end of the tunnel? Maybe there is, but how do you even know there's an end of the tunnel? How do you know where you've got to the end of the tunnel? That's number one. Number two, if you get to the end of the tunnel and there's no light, then what happened? So I'm not saying that things can't get better. I'm saying even when things are dark, I'm not going to sit back and say, well, there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel. I hope there is, but I'm going to say, how can I find light right now? It doesn't have to be shining light. It can be something subtle. So there was a man named Job. By every moral standard, social measure, he was a good man, better than most. He was just, he was generous, he feared God, he lived his life with piety, he harmed no one. He was a very rich man, regardless of his righteousness. And when I say regardless of his righteousness is, there is a presentation of evil that's always accompanied by wealth and riches. If someone who's impoverished can't be evil. That's one of the concepts that we have accepted in our society. And without warning, everything collapsed. We are aware of Job's story. He wakes up in the morning, things start collapsing. But the very interesting thing about Job's story is what happens in the courts of heaven. And that story, I have a lot of questions to ask, but I don't have the answers yet. God has a conversation, has a deal with the devil, and says, and then God presents Job. Have you considered my servant Job? And then the devil gives God the reason why Job is righteous and tells him that he should take away those pillars that hold him, and let's see if he curses God and die. Job is here on earth not knowing what has happened in the cosmos, that they have had a discussion about him and they have made a deal with his life. He wakes up and things start falling apart. Now, remember, the important thing about the story is that Job is a righteous person. He's good. Why do bad things happen to good people? Job is a quintessential example of that. And then things start falling. And Job starts asking very existential questions. Now, I'll stop there, because when we go through hard times and we go through suffering, sometimes we have the proclivity and propensity to jump into solving them, which is fine. But sometimes you have to ask questions. Not ask questions as though you are deserving of an answer, but ask questions as a concerned sufferer. Why am I going through this? Is this pain, or is this particular mayhem a result of my action? And if you're in a good place, it's because of you have done something wrong. Now imagine being in a place like Job. He has absolutely done nothing wrong. And then he suffers. And he has friends come around, stay with him for 7 days. They were silent. And then they start telling him, oh, Job, there's no way you didn't do anything wrong. There's no way, you must have done something wrong for the Almighty to have done this upon you. And they go all back and forth with how Job is not a good person. Job defends his faith, defends his goodness, and all whatnot. And this is not a theological class. However, God answers Job, or rather, I like to put it, in response to Job. He didn't give him any answer. He didn't tell him that, oh, Job, I'm sorry, we are just in heaven on our own, and then the devil walked in, and I just know. He didn't tell him any of that. He begins to ask him existential questions. And the questions he begins to ask, where are you when I created the heavens? Where are you when I did this? Now, this is important, because when you go through dark times in your life, usually it's your fault. But in the cases where it's just faith, where the loss of a loved one, the loss of a friend, the loss of a business, the loss of, you are putting so much effort. How do you navigate such situations? One of the things that we see when you look at Viktor Frankl is the one who, he wrote a book, Man Search for Meaning. One of the survivors of the Holocaust. And he said, he who has a why can live with any how. Which means that, and this is something that you need to pay very close attention to. Before you suffer, or before bad things hit you, have the reason why you live. And arm yourself with such reasons. And arm yourself with, this could be family. This could be because you want to be, it could be a lofty goal. I'm not saying it should be, but I'm saying it could be a lofty goal. Arm yourself with the why. Surround yourself with the why. Why am I in school? I'm in school because I need to. Maybe you're the first graduate. You're the first graduate in your school, in your family. Maybe you need to go to school because if you go to school, you're able to make some money and help your younger ones. So when you have that why in your mind, and then you start dealing with hard things in school, it encourages you. It gives you a level of, well, I understand. I don't know why this is happening, but I'm looking forward to something that is better and stronger. So something transcendent. When I wrote my article and I highlighted this, and this is very important. The 14 reasons why not, which is when I went through depression and how I survived it. It was never about myself. It was something transcendent, because you need something transcendent, something outside yourself to keep you. And Job, when you look at the story of Job, and I'm very careful to comment on it because I can never be Job. Like when I say I can never be Job, like he handled that situation with grace. I would have crashed out, right? But he handled it with grace. But what we need to do is have something transcendent, have a why that transcends you. Something that is outside yourself. It could be faith. It could be something as, I want to be the best man or the best person or the best individual in the particular field, or in the particular field or endeavor. But what happens is when you have that why, when life starts to, because life will test you, and that's the very dangerous thing. Life is going to test you. If you want to be a good person, bad people are going to show up to test you. And that's the thing. If you want to save money, suddenly the law of being extravagant comes up. So you need to arm yourself, and you have to start now. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are we here on earth? if you have a parent that is going through illnesses and your dad or your loved ones, someone close to you loses their life, it's darkness. You don't deserve it. No one deserves it. But how do you navigate that? The first question is, how can you be there for your siblings? How can you be there for the people who are mourning? How can you be there? How can you arm yourself with the mental fortitude? You can do this by several ways. Either you do this by reading, by arming yourself with knowledge. You can do this by dedicating yourself to a faith. You can do this by having a community that helps you. My point is, when you go into darkness, the only thing that darkness throws out every other thing that doesn't matter, and the only thing that matters stands. That's one of the things you see in Job's life, because God tells the devil to take everything apart from his life, and that's very metaphorical when I read it, because when you go through darkness, it takes out every other thing, and the only thing that remains is the only thing that matters. So, like I said in my writing, I thought that life would have been nothing without. I had to leave. I had to do a master's degree. I had to go out. I had to leave the country. If I didn't do this, my life would have ended. But I'm here because all that mattered at that time, when I went through those very dark times, was family. What mattered was the fact that I had people who loved and cared for me. What mattered was that I had to be alive, at least to see, even if it's my younger sister or my friends, go through school and graduate. So you need to have something that is transcendent and something that is away from yourself. The second thing that I want to mention is sometimes we try to explain suffering. We want to explain pain. Rather, you want to explain it away. Or maybe you're going through this because you didn't perform a particular offering, or you didn't perform a particular sacrifice, or maybe you're doing this because somebody in your village has called your name, and all these very superstitious things that hold Black people back or Africans back, where we're not ready to take responsibilities for our actions, and sometimes we just do not want to be held accountable. But when you go through dark times, what you need to realize is that what matters is all that will remain. So think about it. You go through a hard time. It's not funny. You're going to cry. You're going to wonder why you are even born in the first place. But at the end of the day, if you survive, the thing that made you survive is the only thing that matters. In my experience, okay, so I'll give you guys a very vulnerable story. We had a couple of people who were trying to build an organization to help the needy. So I was part of them, feed families. And, I think we had a goal to feed like 100 families or so. And during that time, I was being very performative, because if I help these people, trouble cannot come my way again. That's the whole concept of, if you give tithes, if you give offering, then, God won't send suffering your way. And I was doing it so religiously. After I did that thing, I now applied again for a visa and I got rejected. And I'm like, okay, hold on. But God, look at what I have just done. I have just performed this, and I have just given this tithe, and I've dedicated myself to this and to this and to all that, and yet I'm still going through these hard times. And then when I began to pick up the meaning was when I now realized that maybe you're where you are simply because you have made idols out of things you shouldn't. That's another thing. Maybe you're where you are because you need to be able to see all that matters. So I'm going to pick a particular scenario and I'm going to run it by you. I'm going to tell you how you can find meaning in it. You guys are students. I'm going to pick something that is relatable. You do your project defense. And your laptop crashes. Project crashes. Just goes off and you can't. And then maybe the file you have on your system, you cannot recover it. And you ask yourself, why? Why? How? What have I done? Obviously you start blaming village people and you are people of faith. And then maybe at the end of the day, you get another person's laptop, you're able to recover it, and you finish the project and maybe even ace the project. Do you ever sit back to think about what you have learned going through that particular phase? Have you ever gone through a dark time and you thought about, okay, I haven't gone through this. What have I learned? What did I learn from it? The reason why a lot of people don't do this in Africa, in our culture, is because we live in a very fast-moving world. My 14th reason why not, and I told you I was going to talk about this, and this is where I'm going to lay a lot of this lecture. which is my 14th reason why, which is love. And I said that what saved me was love. And this is something that is going to get me in trouble. So, how did love save me, one may ask? And I'm going to go into the details. I remember when I had called my dad and I told him what I was going through, and I told him I didn't think life was worth living anymore. And he told me what an arrogant statement that is. To think that life isn't worth living simply because a particular individual somewhere in a particular country has deemed that I wasn't worth going through coming into their country. And I said, it doesn't matter. I just think this should just be the end. And this was very suicidal thoughts, because my father thought I was going to even commit suicide, thought I was going to even do something crazy. And he begins to tell me his story. He begins to tell me things he had gone through, money he had lost. And I felt he was making up the stories because I've never heard my father tell me these stories before. Then I speak to one of my close, very, very close friends, and I told elderly man, and I told him about the same story. And he gives me a story. He says he got married at the age of 28, earlier than most of his friends. At 29, he had his child. The child died at 2 months old. He thought, okay, that's fine. I mean, it happens. Him and his wife, they go back at it again, gives birth to another child. At 2 years old, the child dies of drowning. So they have a pool in the house. The baby falls inside and drowned. And at this time, he had also been fired from his office. And he was telling me this story. I was like, you and Job are beginning to sound alike. And he said the only thing that kept him was the fact that he had made a promise to his wife before he got married to her, that they were going to live a better life. And that was all that kept him to this point. And while I think that's a good thing to hold on to, and I thought about it, what if you didn't achieve it? So the point I'm making is, when you hold on to standards and life comes to stress test it, you better be sure, you better hope that what you hold on to can stand the test of time. So what love did for me was, every single time I was among my friends, and if you don't know this, depressed people are usually the happiest people, or at least they seem. I was very happy. I'm like, you seem very excited. I'm like, yeah, I do. And so I had gone through it, and I was among my friends. They were so happy. They were like, okay, Kelechi, you're the one. You're like the life of the party. I'm like, yeah, I'm giving my life away because I'm about to die. So you people just enjoy this. And during those times, I sat down in one of those parties or one of those get-togethers, and I saw how happy my friends were. And I said, Kelechi, you're going to steal these smiley faces away simply because you didn't get a visa. And now, the reason I'm using the visa, I have many bad experiences, but I'm using this because you guys are students, and I know many of you want to go abroad. And you guys are going to apply to school and going to apply for visas, and your experiences may not be so different from mine. Right, that's why I'm using this particularly because you may have these experiences. I have many other examples I could use, and that was the only thing. It was the love. It was the love I had for my friends, which I had more than I had for myself. At least it seemed like, and the love I had for my family, and the love I had for the people around me that said, "I'm going to see this through." And many of them didn't know I was going through the hard time. Only a few people. So that takes me to the third point. The most dangerous thing, and this is important, the most dangerous thing you can do to yourself when you're going through darkness is to go alone. It's important. You never go through darkness alone. You must have a community of people you share your darkness with, because everybody has a light that they can bring. So it's important, because you go through a hard time, and this happens a whole lot in this generation, and I can't understand it. Next thing, you deactivate your Instagram, you deactivate your Twitter, your phone, just disappear. And even if you come back in 2 years, you're not fixed. So what I started doing was I started telling people, bro, I'm going through a lot. Me too. No. I'm going through a lot. And I had to explain to them, and I had to tell them what my thinking was. I had to tell them all my vulnerable moments. And as a man, usually men are not seen to be vulnerable. We don't talk. I talk, and that's why I'm here. Right? So you have to share it with people. It's important. And that's one of the interesting stories I see from Job. Job goes through a hard time. He has 4 friends. They were silent for 7 days, but at least they were there. But what happens is that when you go through hard time, everybody just deactivates Instagram, everybody's quiet, you just stay on your own. And when you stay on your own, that's where the darkness becomes darker and the devil begins to emerge from it. So you begin to think about things you shouldn't be doing, and then you become a victim of yourself. So the most important thing you need to do is first find the firefly, and sometimes the only way to find the firefly is to find it in someone else. So when I say the firefly effect, I'm saying, like I said, bad things can be happening, but think about the good things that could have been bad but didn't become bad. So you have to look at friends. You have to look at friends. It can be community, but you must never go through darkness alone. I see this. When Christ, again, I'm going to keep referencing the Christian faith because I'm a Christian. So when Christ goes through his Gethsemane, his journey in Gethsemane, he calls people. And now, if God Himself can call people and say, "Pray with me for a while," who are you? Like, why do you want to go through it alone? You have to call people, and they better pray and watch with you, and make sure that make sure you survive. And the only way sometimes that can happen is you have to bear your burden. So your darkness becomes their darkness, and their light becomes your light. So that is highly important. One last point that I think I also would make. Let's talk about Viktor Frankl, and that's another place where we see someone who goes through darkness and makes meaning out of it. Within months, he lost his parents, Viktor Frankl, his brother, his wife, and his manuscript. The life's work he has been writing for years. He was reduced to a number, starved, beaten, forced to watch death daily. This is him in the concentration camps. At night, prisoners asked each other the same question: why should we go on? These people were in prison. I do not want to spend time to talk about how morbid the concentration camps were during World War II, but you should spend a little bit more time looking at that. Some stopped to ask. They died shortly after. Frankl noticed something unsettling. This is his observation. This is a prisoner. The prisoner who survived the longest were not the strongest. They were not the healthiest. They were not even the most powerful. They were the ones who had something left to live for. One man lived to see his child again. Another wanted to finish a scientific story. Viktor Frankl himself imagined rewriting his lost manuscript line by line in his mind while marching in the snow. Later, he wrote a book. He wrote a quote in his book: "Those who have a why to live can bear almost anyhow." Darkness did not destroy him; it clarified him. So, it's not the absence of meaning. It's not the absence of meaning. So this is again to summarize this particular module on meaning in darkness, the firefly effect. Something's going wrong in your life. Life is made up of several domains. There is school, there is education, there is health, there is wealth, there are so many things. Do not castigate yourself when one particular domain is going wrong. And when one particular domain is going wrong, look at the other domain. Look for the firefly. You will always find the firefly. Let me ask you guys a question, and maybe you help me answer. What darkness do you think one has gone through that you think is impossible to find meaning in? Let's try and practicalize it. One thing you say, if you go through this and find, the truth is, give me a story better than Job. I don't think there's any. But maybe something personal or practical in your life. I'm sure it's going to take a lot of, it's good for you to even point out something. You have to be vulnerable enough. And I don't think anyone here wants to be that vulnerable. But whatever the case it is, remember, 2 things. Firefly effect. Always look out for people. Always look out for the light in the darkness. The second thing, which is more important, is never suffer alone. And that's one of the big issues. The second point is very important because people always isolate. And during my time, I wanted to isolate. I did. And I realized that if I isolated, I would have imposed it on myself. So I had to get a community of people. I had to gather my friends. I had to be open with them and be honest with them about what I was going through, why I was going through what I was going through, and what the intended dangers were. And like I said, the only thing that stood the test of time in darkness was love. It could be faith. It could be a dream. It could be, this is a bit vain, but it could be the pride to tell some people in your life that regardless of what has happened, you have made it, right? So how do you find that? How you define that is left to you, but you must be able to have something that is transcendent. So when choosing this thing, it has to be something that cannot be touched by life. Because if you love your parents or your mom too much, what happens when she's taken away from you? If you love your dad too much, what happens when he's taken away from you? If you love money too much, what happens when it's taken away from you? So you have to find something that cannot be touched. And for me, it was love. It was untouchable. Love for the people around me. And like I said, the reference is the 14th reason why not. Now, so we're going to drill more on the darkness within in the second part of this particular model, and then we would move on to the war within. Now, the war within, just to give you a bit of a teaser, is we have talked about life, we've talked about pain, I've talked about darkness, especially when it is something that is not your fault because you don't know why you're suffering. Now, the third part of this model, which is going to talk about, what we're going to talk about later, is when it is your fault. There's war within, right? The duality of self, the story of Cain and Abel. And once we are done, that will be the end of the term. So, does anyone have any question, story, anything they want to highlight before we end this one to start?
I love the angle you are actually placing this story on, like personally, the visa, yeah, because it also happened to me. When I graduated secondary school, I was like, I'm going to travel out. And so everything's going to be in place. And I tried the first time, flopped. The woman told me, actually, I love to give you, but I mean, thumbs down.
Thumbs down.
And when it happened the first time, I was depressed.
As you should.
Yeah, I was depressed. But I think one thing that held me was faith, was church. Because even though I wasn't so spiritual at that time, I loved going to church.
Oh, yeah.
Anything they are doing, I'll be there.
Yeah.
Media, I'll be there.
Yeah.
So personally, faith, church held me, and family.
Yeah.
Because all these stories of families, this, that, anybody that doesn't hold his family tight will suffer. Thank you.
So that is an interesting story. You wanted to say something that said I can answer to so we can end it. Let me quickly, one of the things we undermine the value, the invaluable price that we pay when we isolate. And again, the only reason I'm going the visa route is because one of the biggest dreams of people in this country is to leave the country. And I don't know why that is the case. I mean, I know why, but I know why that is the case. But so that because of that's one of their biggest dreams. When they get rejected, it affects them in ways that I've seen it happen to myself, observing myself. I've seen it happen to people externally, and you guys are students, so that's why I'm also pointing this in a different direction.
Okay, so the part where you said someone shouldn't go through it alone, no matter what you are going through. So actually, I don't know if I should show this as a question or...
Yeah, show it as a question.
Yeah, so okay, let me use myself as an instance, right? So there was a time I was into...
drugs.
Okay, so there was a time I was into Forex.
Forex. Oh, yes. Okay. I know where this is going to. I know where this is going to.
So yeah, initially, I mean, I was one of the lucky set of people that when you start,
you make the money quick.
It will start going on. And there was a name my friends started calling me Pablo. Yeah, you understand. So along the line, there was now a point like I took a trade and like everything, like millions, everything.
You lost everything.
And then, unfortunately, I think I borrowed some funds to add to it and everything. So we're talking millions and this thing. So, and I was in school at the time. But mind you, my classmates had gone home. So I was the only one in my room.
The only one in campus, yeah.
I was the only one there and everything. And at that point, like I was depressed. Like
as you should.
Depression. I was not online. I wasn't posting. So only few people like my guys that were like, this guy is not posting. Something don't sup. So this and everything. And like few of them managed to reach out and this thing. And like the day that one of them even managed to find out what happened and this thing, I was already like at the edge with
A
sniper.
sniper.
So I was like, I'm going to, and I was in campus, so I was in school. I was like, I'll drink this sale, let me end this thing.
Yeah.
And all they say, like, you are very much. And all of them sat and but like, I'm not the type of person that believes in opening up. Yeah, because I've seen what opening up has done to some people.
Yeah,
you can decide like,
vulnerability.
let me be vulnerable. Let me tell these people my story.
Yeah.
And then when it happens,
I get
you now become the subject of ridicule.
you're ridicule, yeah.
So you now start questioning your choices like, why did I even let
this
it
in
out
the first place?
in the first place? I should have just kept it to myself. You understand? Even I've seen some families, you say, okay, even if you don't want to tell friends, you can tell your family members. And that's when, if your father is the kind of person that will be like, you are a very foolish boy, you are like those kind of parents and everything. So, do you now blame people that actually go through all these things and they don't want to tell people?
So that's a very good question. So let me tell you, the way I answered that question is everything has a cost. There's a cost for vulnerability and there's a cost of the lack of it. And you have to weigh it. There's a cost of speaking up. There's a cost of having people speaking up and risking people ridiculing you. And there's a cost of drinking sniper and dying. And you have to wait. So I tell people, like I've said it before, and what is important? Ridicule or life? So you have to be able to wait. And it's not easy. Trust me, it's not. Because especially in the place where after you have been vulnerable with someone, when you guys are fighting 2 years, it's not you. You get it's not you that we saw that did. Yeah, it happens. But you have to be, like I said, you have to be able to wait. So at every point, you have to wait. You have to wait. So I wrote an article, and this is one of my latest article. It is the good, the bad, the ugly, and how I highlighted the three things is, and I'll explain this to you. There's the good, there's the bad, there's the ugly. The good is what you want. The bad is what you would face getting to good. The ugly is decadent. Decadent meaning avoid the entire course of the pursuit. To put it in a better way, good is graduating from school. Bad is going to school every day, having to pay school fees, not being yourself, being tired, sleeping for 2 hours in a day. That's the bad. Ugly is drop out and be a destitute. But so at every point you have to choose. So your ability to understand that there is a price you have to pay helps. For example, okay, fine. I mean, we all know that there are bad people in this world who are going to ridicule your this thing. But we also need to be aware there are good people who are going to step up to you, who are going to come and help you. So our brains are negative biased, which means we always remember the bad and not the good. To be honest, I was telling I was having a conversation, and please, I beg you, I am not calling any artist name. I'm just saying. When I see artists talk about haters, I'm like, you have like 1,000 likes, followers, people who love you more than anything else. Why do you spend your entire music talking about haters? You have people that cherish you and people that would pay anything to see you. So that's the problem we have. We always are highlighting haters. If you speak to somebody about what you went through and they ridicule you, fine, never speak to the person again. There are other people who are first going to listen to you. Secondly, who are probably going to offer better advice and going to help you. And for family, blood is thicker than water, they say, which means my closeness is not based on blood relationship. It's how much me and you are able to contend and be for each other. It's not about because we are of the same clan, we are now close. No, again, this is my opinion, my personal philosophy. I'm not close to you because we are close by blood or something. No, I tend to make my friends based on how much we fight together, not against each other, together. When we contend for something. So yeah, that's where I put it. So you have to know the cost. What is the cost of vulnerability and what's the cost of lack of it? And usually the cost of lack of it is worse, because in your own case you would have and you won't be here, and we won't all be here because of you. So that's the cost.
Yeah, so you said nobody should go through a dark time alone. What about if you don't have someone to talk to? Like you have friends, but like nobody can like relate to you. Like you are just like I've been in situations where like I'm going to like it happens all the time, and I just used to tell myself that maybe it's one of those isolation period. Then later I will come outside of it, something like that. But what should you do in those times where like you don't have someone to talk to? Maybe your parents. If I go and meet my mom now, she'll be like, sometimes you're pressing phone too much. Your phone is the cause of these
Yeah.
things, those type of things, yeah?
Yeah.
So what do I do in those times where like my friends don't relate to what I'm going through, or like when I'm saying it's not making any sense to them, or like even talking, I don't know how to like there's sometimes that I don't know how to explain it, but I understand it in my head that okay, this is what I so at that time I can't tell somebody that this is what I'm going through. So what do you do
So,
in those times?
very good question. Sometimes you don't need to understand what you're going through. Sometimes the healing is in the presence. Sometimes the healing is in being heard. Sometimes you don't need someone to tell you what you need to do, especially when you're going through a hard time. You actually sometimes know what you want to do. You just want someone to hear you. And I found it very interesting that when you start to speak to people about your problem, while you're speaking to them, you begin to speak about the solution. It's very interesting. I've seen it happen several times. If you're going through a hard time and I'm telling you, oh, this is what I'm going through, if you speak well enough and be like, okay, maybe, then you realize. So sometimes it's not about them saying, oh, I relate with you. Because at the end of the day, no one can really, really relate with you because it can be the same event, but the way you respond to it can be very, very, very different. So the healing is not in their response, it's just in the presence. Oh, they are there and they're listening to you. Because if you look at Job's story, I hope I had this right. Job's friends spent 7 days with him, silent. So sometimes it's just having people that are going to listen to you. Now, it is very embarrassing when you speak to somebody and they make nothing of your. I beg you, like you said, he's always pressing phone. You have to be very careful about those kind of things. But you have to speak to people who may even say, I actually don't know. I can't. I don't know how I can help you, but I hear you. And if you speak long enough to such people, and I think that's one of the great attributes of writing, because at least for me, when I write about what I'm going through and I highlight it, in my writing I begin to see the solution. Solution not as though a direct solution, but a coping mechanism. So when you speak to people, and now for example, I'm speaking to you people about what I've gone through, and some of you have in your minds highlighted, people have scenarios that has happened in the past that have brought up by speaking, and you have not, okay, maybe I should have done this differently, or maybe I should, and tomorrow, when you go through something that is dark, you're going to remember this. So sometimes it's not in there, okay, you know what, it's never going to be prescriptive. Oh, you're going through a hard time. Okay, do this, now do this, now do this. If you have someone like that, good. But usually, when it's pain and suffering, especially when it's internalized, the healing is in the speaking, or rather, it's in the hearing, for someone to just hear you. And that's why, again, I'm not going to make ridicule of or disregard the role of therapists. What do you think therapy is all about? The therapist doesn't need to know. They guide you to the solution. Okay, so breathe in, now breathe out, and then they start asking you questions that if you start answering, you realize that the answers that you're looking for are actually in the questions that have not been asked to you. So that's one thing that I think is important. So go through a hard time. Isolation is dangerous because when you go silent, you realize that your mind is you're not, the devils begin to speak loudly to you. So you have to have people who are able to keep you in check. That was 3 good points. So we're going to end this. So remember, firefly effect. Now, to your point also, right? To also help you, and this is another thing. A lot of people can become very, I don't want to say very vulnerable. Like once they have a problem, it becomes everybody's problem. No. Sometimes, what is important is just have somebody who is not necessarily, it's not someone who is going to really give you the answer, but someone who can a listening ear, a shoulder to cry on. But the first point, which I made, is the fireflies. I think that's the first thing everybody needs to do. You're going through a hard time. Before you start talking to people, find the firefly. What is going on well in my life? And that's the utility of gratitude. right? And that will now form the second part of this module. I'm going to talk about, before we go into the world within, the utility of gratitude. And then when we do that, we would go into, after that, we'll go into the world within. So, thank you all, and then we'll see in the next module. Yeah.